Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Linking Up with LinkedIn to Increase Employment Opportunities. Now, this webinar is brought to you by the National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision at Mississippi State University and Insight. Again, we would like to thank you for joining us. My name is Kentrice Moffitt, and I will be in the chat making sure we gather and answer your questions. And Sarah Moody, she will be helping us out with technical issues. Would you say hello, Sarah?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Moody, and I am the communications coordinator here for the NRTC.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. First off, we have Kendra Farrell. Kendra is a certified vision rehabilitation therapist, and she is the project director of the Older Individuals Who Are Blind Technical Assistance and Training Center, OIB TAC. She has over 14 years of experience providing direct services. She authors continuing education courses. She leads program evaluations, presents at conferences and workshops, and she promotes best practices through technical assistance. So you see, she is a very busy lady. Next up, we have Maurice Crittenden. He is the senior specialist at Insight Talent Acquisition. He works to build and develop talent networks by searching for and connecting with high quality blind and visually impaired talents in support of Insight's host of employment services. And these include job readiness, professional development, recruitment efforts, and training programs. So you see, he has his hands full as well. So as professionals with vision loss, Kendra and Maurice will discuss how linking up with LinkedIn can help increase employment opportunities for people with blindness or low vision. All right, without further ado, Kendra and Maurice, you have the floor.
All right. Yes, thank you for that great introduction. So I think before we just jump in, I should at least just let you know that until 2 days ago, I did not have a LinkedIn account, and I have not been at all interested in it until just recently when we've talked about this topic. So part of the preparation for this webinar was for me to do some research and prepare to make a LinkedIn account. So the questions I'm going to pose to Maurice are the questions that I had as I was preparing myself to build a LinkedIn account, to understand what it is, how it works, how I should present myself. And there's a few technical things that I discovered along the way. So if I jump in giving some of those technical suggestions as we go through, it'll make sense why I'm asking the questions as if I don't have an account yet, but yet then I have some answers later on. So I didn't want anyone to be confused as we go through. Okay, so Maurice, I have heard that LinkedIn is a great way to connect with people professionally and to learn about job opportunities. As someone who is blind, I have some questions that have come up as I'm starting to do some research, and I wondered if we could talk about that today.
Sure, let's get started. So LinkedIn is a fantastic job seeker research. It's the world's largest professional networking resource with over 590 million users. It's for anybody and everybody who's serious about improving their career chances and taking their careers more seriously. They're going to be looking for new opportunities to grow their careers and network with other professionals in their field and related fields. Regardless of your work experience, if you're looking to network and looking to improve your possibilities, think about creating a LinkedIn account.
All right. So I Googled how to set up a LinkedIn account, and I got a lot of interesting information. I'm going to go through each one of the items that I read about and ask you to give me some feedback on each one. Okay. So the first thing that I read about is called a headline, and I wondered if you could tell me, how this works and what I should or should not include in that headline.
Kendra, the headline is something you really should pay attention to. Picture this in your mind. It stretches across the top of your LinkedIn page. So anyone who comes across your profile, whether in a search or in a connection request, will see it. It's typically the first thing the recruiter will see after your name. Think of it as your personal brand. So your headline should be more than just your job title. Add some elements that talk about who you are and kind of what you do. It kind of shows you as an individual, why you do it, and what motivates you. This is how you're motivated and what you're motivated by. You want to do this all in a very creative and informative way, while being a bit succinct, because you only have 220 characters to do it in.
All
It should
right.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you got it.
The next section that I read about is called the summary. And going back to the headline, I think there's a limit of 220 characters for that. So that needs to be fairly short. Am I correct on that? Do you know?
You are correct.
Okay. All right. For the summary section, this is going to be a little bit more detailed, and I think I can go up to about 2,000 characters in this section. So I'm wondering if this might be a good place to disclose my disability, because I see that there's people writing some like personal, putting some personal flair in this section.
So think of the summary as being a place to describe what you detailed in your headline in more detail. You want to use it to put career choices into context, and it's your chance to put your best self forward. Talk about kind of what you tick, tell your story, and put your career experience into context and experience. List some of the names of the organizations you've worked for. You can also mention why, the certain career is the career for you. Try to use words and phrasings from the career or like job postings that are industry keywords that also get you some attention in your summary. So you talked about disclosure in this one too, Kendra. Kendra, disclosure is one's personal choice. You can choose or not to choose to disclose your visual impairment in this section. Typically, some people do not disclose. However, if you may be looking for a job with a blindness related association or organization, it might be a good idea to somewhere weave into that summary that you are visually impaired. Sometimes the LinkedIn algorithm, and when people search on LinkedIn, recruiters search on LinkedIn, they may be able to pick up some of those keywords from that part of your profile, the summary.
All right. So did you happen to look at the summary that I posted on my page? I don't know if you looked at it or not.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I just connected with you.
That's fine. So I did actually disclose in my summary statement. So
and that makes sense, Kendra, because where you're working actually with research with the blindness community directly. I think that it's great to mention your blindness there, because it's another way to connect with your intended and potential audiences.
Right. So another item is the skills, and you can put, I think it's up to 50 skills on this list. So how do I select these skills and choose what's most important here?
There are several different skills you can include in this skill section. Again, try to use words and phrases or concepts from your resume, and that's really important. You want to use things that are actually in your resume that are in demand and will allow recruiters to easily identify you based on these skills. So if you want to, they can be identified through your profile or your resume. So LinkedIn has a limit of 50 skills, 50. So try to be judicious in the skills that you choose to list in your profile. Don't, there are lists out on the internet that have some LinkedIn skills, but really make sure those are the skills you possess. Those are the skills that can be demonstrated or seen in your resume, and that are really in demand.
Okay.
Optimizing this section in your skills, Kendra, can really help you boost your search results, boost you in search results, because it works with the LinkedIn algorithm as well. So the LinkedIn algorithm picks up keywords across your profile, and as recruiters look for these keywords, your profile tends to move up the list in their search results.
So do you think it would be good to Google like what are the top skills that are needed, so that if they are strengths, I make sure I get them on the list?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So by Googling, top skills, that's where you start. However, you kind of need to be a bit more focused in kind of targeting those skills, because if you're looking for careers to be a research scientist, for instance, those skills may be a bit different than skills from being in another profession, maybe similar to recruiting. So do your research, really focus on the industry you're looking for, but really try to find those in-demand skills.
Okay. And how many skills should I have? Is there like an optimal number? Like if I go more than 20, does that like start being overwhelming to somebody looking at my page, or should I try to keep it to 10 or something?
No, it really, and that depends upon the amount of experience that is demonstrated and you can show through your profile. So the maximum limit again is 50. But if you have years of experience and you have a number of these skills that can be justified or shown throughout your profile, please feel free to list those. This shows the level of your qualifications.
Okay, so one thing I want to just give a screen reader tip here. When I was filling in, like for instance, the box where you do the skills, it appeared to me when I was doing it that it was a drop-down menu, and I tried to use the Alt down arrow to list out what was in that menu, which does not work in this context. You need to actually start typing something like communications. You want to start typing CO, and it's going to pop up some different things that then you can scroll down that list with your arrows and look at it, but the actual choices don't appear until you start typing something.
Right.
And I didn't actually look for this, but somebody told me that JAWS is a skill that you can add to your list. So anyway, as an interesting aside.
if you're proficient in JAWS, please list that, because when going to work as a person who uses a screen reader, if you have that proficiency, that would be great for employers to recognize as well.
But if you don't disclose and then you put that as a skill, that might look kind of odd. I don't know.
It's a quiet disclosure in that case.
Okay. Okay, we're going to take a brief break here and see if there's any questions from the participants. We will continue on with the questions, but we want to really answer questions that you have today. So if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in the chat box. And we'll give just a minute here.
Kendra, this is David Dino Terrace.
Hello.
How are you?
Great.
Very good. I'm really enjoying the Maurice's presentation, and I just really like something that Maurice said just right at the end there, that you could list JAWS as a skill, and it's a very soft, gentle way of letting people know that you are blind or visually impaired, without putting it in. And I'd personally agree. I don't have it in my statement, but people can figure it out if they want to. But I don't feel the need to be disclosing that. And so I thought what Maurice said there, by listing some of those skills like JAWS or orientation, whatever, could let people know that you want them to know, but you don't necessarily need to come right out because maybe you want people to know, or maybe you don't want people to know, or maybe you want a recruiter to know, or maybe you don't want a recruiter to know. And Maurice said it's a personal choice whether you do it or not. Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Kendra, before we move on, if we don't have any other questions, this skills section is for skills that, you know, we've talked about, you've experienced or have gained through your work experience. But if you have limited work experience or no work experience, you can still put skills into this section. The skills that you will use in this section, if you have a bit of limited work experience, are transferable skills. So these are skills that you gain from doing things in your hobbies or pastimes, like maybe perhaps you created a website on your own, or you organize events for a local community group, church, etc. Organization and management of these projects or building these websites, they are solid skills that you may not necessarily have been paid for, but really should, if they can be, listed in this skills section. Just always kind of build your brand and make it easier for recruiters to find you.
This is Lee Huffman with the American Printing House for the Blind. I just had one question. I know it would be an estimate. Is there any type of an estimate from LinkedIn about how many blind or visually impaired users that they have for the platform?
That I don't know if they have that number or that kind of that amount, that number. But I know that LinkedIn is really open to accessibility, and in that light, they do have an accessibility help desk in which members who need some help with their assistive technology and using LinkedIn can reach out to that resource to ask.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Text.
Okay.
Audio.
I have someone asking a direct question to me about what is JAWS. So for those of you who might not know what JAWS is, it stands for Job Access with Speech, and it's a screen reader program. And the menu that I mentioned having difficulty with it's like a, I don't know, it's a box that you can type something in, but it looks the way the screen reader read it to me. It seems like it should be a drop-down menu, that it's usually like the key command to drop it down would be an alt down arrow. But when you do that, nothing's going to happen. And so you just simply need to start typing something into the box, and then you will be able to go down with your arrow to see some choices related to the first couple letters of whatever, you know, you're looking for.
It's an auto-populated field. So as Kendra is describing, sometimes when you're using JAWS, you're coming to boxes, they seem like combo boxes and things like that. So Kendra, I didn't know that you ran into that, but I did find the same issue when I used a LinkedIn via the app. So in starting to type, it seemed like it would be kind of like this drop-down box as you described. But on the app, it's a bit easier because as you start typing a few letters in, it's easier to kind of swipe and get to the list of responses. Not quite as easy, I believe, on the PC.
So someone is asking about a visual example. Sarah, is
yes, one thing I was
is the one I did the other day, is that up, the video?
Yes, so we put up a video, and it's going to be on our webinars and podcast page. I'll drop that link here in just a second. It's about an 18-minute video of going through setting up a LinkedIn account. If that's not something that's a resource that you are looking for specifically, definitely reach out to us and we'll see what we can work on for you.
Yeah, and so it's me setting it up using JAWS and what I did on Monday. So it really took me about an hour and a half to do what we've condensed into 18 minutes. So you don't have to see how many times I go back and forth trying to figure out how to do something, but the end of me actually succeeding doing things. So there's a lot of choices. Once you get the account set up, it kind of just dumps you in there, and you have to learn some things, it is really helpful potentially to have a sighted person beside you as you're doing it, just because it is a whole website, there's a lot of different things going on there. And, until you get used to it, you have to kind of learn where things are and what JAWS is going to name them when it comes to that. So.
And it looks like David has his hand raised. So maybe one more question and then we can keep moving forward till some
Okay.
questions at the end.
This is David Kingsbury. Is that the? Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm an assistive technology trainer. People using JAWS and so on. So I'd like to ask a question, but then I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. When you revise, update LinkedIn and particularly the profile page, is there any user testing that is done with people with disabilities like screen readers? The reason I'm asking is, as a trainer, when I've got to train people how to create a profile, edit their profile, revise it, I sort of dread it. I sort of give, if I could, creating a profile, updating it, I'll give it a accessibility grade of C-. This issue of drop downs was raised, but I find some other more serious issues. It's really hard to update your profile using a screen reader, even if you're a fairly good user, proficient user of screen readers. So is user testing systematically done when you update? And no, that's my question.
I cannot speak to or respond to that, as these are things that would happen on the back end on LinkedIn side, but I would think that there is some user testing that occurs, but I can reach out to find to get an answer for that question and then have it reported back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Kendra, this is David. I'd like to say that I actually enjoy the experience using LinkedIn more on my iPhone than I do with JAWS.
Yes. And you're not alone on that, I don't think, because Maurice has shared with me that he prefers to do it that way as well. And I don't know if you even said that you're a screen reader user as well, Maurice, but yeah. But yes, Maurice prefers that as well. And I just downloaded the app last night and started messing with it. But again, it is overwhelming until you train and choose some things so that the app can push you the things that you really want to see. It's, like I'm getting a lot of things about, developing JavaScripts or something, and I don't care anything about, computer programming, but I had a ton of stuff in my list about that last night.
Love to see you guys develop a training on using the LinkedIn iOS app, because I think it's less clunky than with JAWS, and it's like at first it's confusing, right? Like you said, Kendra, if you don't use it, you're like, wow, this is hard, this is inaccessible, this is complicated. But once you learn, like, you can swipe down, it's not like Facebook, it's not like Twitter. But once you learn how to use the LinkedIn app, I own my own business, and LinkedIn has been a huge blessing to me in my business. And I know that it could be helpful to people who are doing a job search.
Yeah. The jobs tab is very easy to find in the app. I found that it was very, it's in the bottom right corner, and it was just really obvious to me. And when I went there, it was actually showing me like useful things. I'm not currently looking for a job, but I turned that feature on at first just so I could see what kinds of things it shows you. And so then speaking to the other David's comment, I wanted to turn it off, and I was having a very hard time going back and figuring out how to turn off that feature, since I'm not actually seeking for a job right now. So anyway.
And no matter which platform you choose to use, whether you use a PC or Mac or a mobile device, LinkedIn will initially provide some challenges, but as long as you practice, you're in the in the tool or in the application as much as possible and just getting accustomed to it, it becomes a bit easier. Believe me, when I first created a LinkedIn profile, I felt very lost. But having to be on the platform fairly regularly, I got a bit accustomed to where to find things, how to move through the platform on PC, and then much easier having that experience on my mobile device.
All right, so we're going to jump back into the questions that I have for you, Maurice, and then we'll have more time, I think, for some questions at the end. So I started working on updating my resume to share on the LinkedIn page I was creating. And then I realized that there's also sections in the profile where you can put, your employment history, your education, things that would appear on the resume. So I wondered if I actually have to put my resume on LinkedIn, because I was also concerned with privacy, because you're just kind of putting it out there, and like I have my cell phone number on my resume, so, and my street address, and personal information that I might not want to just share with everyone. So yes. Is it okay to not put a resume on your LinkedIn account?
Kendra, that's a good question. And yes, it is okay to not put a resume on your LinkedIn account. If you kind of format and fill out all of the fields, particularly in your experience, your education and so forth, there really isn't a need to put the same information that is included in your LinkedIn profile as an attachment for in your resume. And the issues that you raise about kind of privacy concerns are well justified. So in general, it probably is best advised if you don't include your resume on your LinkedIn profile.
Okay. The next thing I was looking at relates to the photo. So, I'm not big into photos since I can't see them, but there was lots of advice online about photos, and my personal photo, and then there's also a background image. So could you speak to how to select those and best practices for choosing your photo and your image?
Yes. So as a person with both of us being people with visual impairments, it is difficult to really select an image or a photo of yourself. You'll definitely need sighted help with this. But when you're looking for that image, try to take or select an image that takes that you take up about 60% of that image. So that means basically from your shoulders to the top of your head is most, and a little above is most of that image. So you want to take that in good light. So natural light is obviously the best, and make sure it's a recent picture. So don't take a picture from 10 years ago. If a person is going to look at your LinkedIn profile and they view your image, make sure if you come to an interview maybe a week later that you look, they can tell who you are by the way you looked in your image, not totally different. So be sure to smile in your picture. If you like to, you can show a little bit of teeth. Dress professionally, but yet still in a way that you feel comfortable. And then try to use elements to make your picture pop. So you can use contrasting colors, but don't try to have an overly busy background or overly busy patterns in your clothing, as that can be a bit of a distraction.
And what about the background image? Can you explain what that is and is it important to have it?
Yes. So the background image is another aspect of this, of kind of like your picture, and then there is a background image. The background image is a box that kind of spans behind your picture, and it really gives viewers of your profile a bit more insight, visual insight in this case, to your interests. So there you will choose to put an image here and have some sighted help to make sure it stretches across the entire field. So these images or examples of these images can be found by doing a Google search, or sometimes as I have searched, LinkedIn has provided links to some usable backgrounds. And that way you can just copy, paste, and then put them into that background field.
Okay. So I want to jump to talking about connections and how we connect with people on LinkedIn. I think that this is a pretty important part of why you would use LinkedIn, is to connect with others. And how do you make those connections, and who, you know, if you're starting out, like where do you start? How do you get those first connections started?
So building a professional network can be essential to you in both your job search and for your career. LinkedIn is considered to be, of course, the best networking tool in today's job market. Your professional network is a helpful career resource. Think about it. You can both find new individuals in your field and connect with recruiters in your field. So if you're looking for new positions or want to learn more about a new industry, LinkedIn is the place to be. So when looking for connections, you can start with people you know, and like friends, family members, colleagues, and then expand your network from there.
So if I would be like, I'm just taking myself back in time to like a first job, like, how would I know who to connect with if I don't really have coworkers or colleagues in the field yet?
You could it would be helpful to connect with other professionals. You went back to your first job, maybe a manager at that first job, maybe an official who might be on LinkedIn from a community organization you are involved with or you volunteered with, or individuals from fields that you'd be interested in applying to.
What about using, trying to connect with like a college professor? Would that be a good connection? You still there, Maurice?
Maurice, you muted yourself.
Sorry about that. Yes, that would be a good option, to reach out to a college professor or anybody else from the university that you attended. Professors would be, a professor would be a.
Uh-oh, you're linked again. You're muted again.
He's having some audio issues. He wasn't muted that time. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Are you back up, Maurice? Oh, can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you. It's still not. Yeah, it's still having some issues.
So
Kendra, yeah,
there.
No, it's David. I'd say, I think you've got a lot of experts on this call here. Why don't you continue with your questions and do your best until he comes back?
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll ask you, David, because I know you're a LinkedIn expert.
All right.
Do you have anything else to add to making those connections with people?
So I think our church is a great place, where a place of worship.
Okay.
I believe that's a great place, other places that we've worked, other places that we've volunteered, other places, people where we've gone to school. I know that I always get recommendations, people from East Stroudsburg University, where I got my undergraduate, people from Montclair State University, where I got my master's, people where I live in the Hershey, Pennsylvania area. So it'll give you ideas. And then as your network grows, it'll say, maybe you know this person, or maybe you'll know that person. And I think, also very important, people that you respect on LinkedIn, go to their page and look at their friends list, because those are likely people that you may want to know also. So I think those are some good ways to make connections. Some people might say that's a little creepy, looking at your friends, but I don't think so. I'm just looking to build my network.
Yeah. So it's a little different than Facebook, where you don't really want people to be your friends, to be connected with people who aren't really people you know in real life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But, the other thing is too, is that I found from experience that like, cold calling is a lot harder than warm calling. So when they're, hey, Kendra, like I've used LinkedIn this way. Kendra, I see that you're friends with um, Carol on LinkedIn. Can you do a can you do an email introduction to me? I'd like to learn more about her company.
Okay.
So that's a way to use it. So we're not, exploiting anyone or taking advantage of anyone, but we're saying, hey, I know you.
Okay, we're losing you too, David.
Okay, I
was about to
think we
say-
have Maurice is back. He's muted now, but hopefully his audio is back up.
Okay.
Maurice?
Yes, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. This is a great tag team. Thank you, David. One more thing to add to this part about the connections. Once you start making connections, what will happen is you send a connection request, and then both on the app and on the PC, if you start arrowing down or make your way down the page, you'll see other people who may be connected to those you've reached out to, other people in your network, and then you can also build your connection network that way by looking at that list and then reaching out to individuals from that list who have kind of like a similar point of interest.
Great. So the next question I have is about getting skills validated. And so I don't know how you go about getting your skills validated. Can you explain that to me?
Skills validations are, they can be helpful. As recruiting trends evolve, requirements won't always stay the same. So validating your skills or having someone validate your skills are a way to prove that you have what you've listed, and someone can speak to, yes, this, I know that, yes, Kendra can do this. She is a very good organizer, public speaker, whatever you have in that skill session. So if you list your skills, try to list skills for that can be validated by colleagues, coworkers, or even managers.
Okay. So who are, well, you talked about who the people are that provide the validations, but I also was reading about how you should try to then validate something in return, kind of an etiquette, a LinkedIn etiquette to, if you know that person, that you can provide them a validation in as a thank you for them validating one of your skills. Is that how, if I would reach out and validate one of David's skills, then he could reach out and do one of my skills? Is that how it works?
That's a good way of looking at it, and it does often work that way. So if David validates a skill of yours, it would be nice if you can go on, take a look at the list of David's skills, and for any that you can validate, to go ahead and validate that. This is an easy way to kind of build validations and also help those who validate you build their level of validations. And the level of validations you have, again, play into that LinkedIn search algorithm. If you're a job seeker, and employers want employers to see you, the number of skills you have listed, the number of validations you have, keywords in your summary and so forth, all play into that. So try to have skills that can be validated, skills that are in demand and so forth. And then that helps you potentially get a job.
I think it makes sense. Are there any other etiquette things related to interacting on LinkedIn that I should be aware of?
When you interact on LinkedIn, you always want to interact using the lens that LinkedIn is a professional network. So you can add a little bit of your personal life to some of the things that may be posted, but it's less personal than Facebook. Think of it more like if you post things, and the etiquette that you use on here would be to post things that are business related, and always comment or make note of things in the same way on the platform.
So now that I've created a LinkedIn account, how often should I look at it?
It's always a good practice to check your LinkedIn at least once a day. If you're a job seeker, I would recommend doing it several times a day. When you're checking, you can look for jobs that have been posted by either jobs that have been posted, new connections to make, but you're always going to want to be on the platform looking for, the next thing that you can take advantage of.
All right, and I think we've already talked about where the jobs, how to find the jobs. I saw it was pretty easy on the app. Within the online version, is it just as easy to find where those jobs are listed, or can you describe that at all?
It is just as easy. So in LinkedIn, and depending upon which web browser you use, towards the top of the page, there will either be a search box that works the same with your screen reader that you can just go and populate, or again, depending upon the browser, you have to click a link and that will open that search box. You can put in the title of a job there, click search, and then when it's time to filter, arrow down to the filters and then click on jobs. It will bring you to the tab that way, or there is also going directly to the jobs tab, as similar to that in the web, to look for jobs specifically there too. So you can do it by search or by going directly to the jobs tab.
Right. So when I was setting it up, there were a couple of questions related to jobs that I found, and all of these were these drop-down menus that aren't really drop-down menus. They're just the autofill boxes.
Right.
But it asked me what type of job I was looking for. So job titles, it's really helpful to have a specific job title, I guess, in mind. And then the second thing was it asked where, what area that you were looking, a geographic area that you were looking for a job in. So again, it's a drop-down box. So you could pick a city, a state, all of North America, they had different things. And then there was a checkbox that you would be open to remote work, that you could just check a box. So those were the only choices, but it did seem to push then things to that jobs listing that matched what I had originally put in there. So
Yes.
That was nice to see that was pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward. I don't know if you can do this in that section or not, but when searching for area, you can also search for metropolitan areas, but make sure that it's a metropolitan area or area in general that you can easily get to or have access to. So make sure that is accurate, and then remote is always good. And sometimes for the title, try to use some alternative job titles there as well to see if that changes your results in the end.
What else can I do on LinkedIn?
Ooh, there are a ton of things you can do on LinkedIn. Some of the things you can do on LinkedIn are they have LinkedIn has a very good learning library. So the learning library is not free, of course. If you have a premium account, that is a part of your premium account, and then you can take classes from that. You can take classes from anything like marketing to a kind of advanced computer skills. So we have that. And then there's something that has been newly built, and it's called skills validation. So these skills validations or assessments actually are kind of LinkedIn tests that will provide a LinkedIn credential for whichever skill that you're wishing to be assessed on. So for instance, if there is a Microsoft skills assessment provided by LinkedIn, you go in, you take the assessment. There is some extra time available on these assessments for those who need a bit of extra time. And then once you've passed that, that is a mark on your LinkedIn profile and a credential that you have been assessed to be, an expert. in this field or in that skill.
So someone put in the chat box that the skills assessments are not accessible on the app. Can you speak to that, Maurice?
I can't speak to that being accessible on the app, but in addition to the other question, I'm reaching out on those test groups. I'll reach out to talk about or find answers to those skills assessments being a bit more accessible using the app.
Have you done some of the skills assessments, Maurice?
Oh no, I am not an expert in too much of anything. Just a master of yeah. What is it?
I'd be afraid to do it. Like, what if I fail? Then is it gonna like take it off my list as a skill?
No, it won't take it off. But you just don't have that big credential.
Oh, anyway, all right. Well, I think unless you had something else you wanted to add, Maurice, we'll. Are the skills assessments similar to the ones that Indeed uses?
So I believe it may be similar. However, on LinkedIn kind of being this networking tool, it's easier to be seen and to be recognized by recruiters and those who are looking for talent. So it may be similar, but the LinkedIn skills assessments, in my opinion, may do you a bit better, because if you're going to have to transfer it from Indeed to your LinkedIn profile, rather than having it just appear on your profile, it may be a bit easier.
All right. Were there any other questions in the chat box, Sarah or Cantrice, that we haven't answered yet? I feel like there were some that came in there.
Yeah, so Jaleesa had the question. She wanted to know, is it a bad thing if you don't post anything on LinkedIn?
No, thanks for that question, Jalissa. It's not a bad thing if you don't post anything on LinkedIn. There are thousands to millions of users who necessarily don't post things. However, if you do post things or repost things, that's another way to kind of draw attraction to your profile. So my Insight, as Insight posts has LinkedIn posts, I choose to go in and repost those. So anybody looking at my profile may be drawn into to take a look at the Insight profile and vice versa. And it's a good way to kind of blend, but it definitely won't knock you out of consideration for any positions you may be applying for.
Kendra and Maurice, I don't see any other questions in the chat, but maybe there are some other questions. Maybe if someone raised their hand, they may want to ask questions that way.
Hi, this is Lee Huffman again from the American Printing House for the Blind. My question is, could you speak to the benefits that LinkedIn specifically has for people who are blind or visually impaired to use the platform? I mean, what reasons would we want to specifically use LinkedIn, and how can it specifically help people who are blind and visually impaired in their career? So I'm thinking, if you're a student in transition age, maybe like 16 to 23 or 24, why would you choose LinkedIn to be the platform? And what can it do for you specifically because of to help you with a person with a visual impairment looking for a job?
It's just a great job resource to begin with. So if you want to being held in consideration in the field of employment, it could never hurt you to have a LinkedIn profile. So even being a person with a visual impairment, being a person with a limited job experience, it's always better to have a profile than not to have a profile, because it's one of the first places recruiters go to look for talent.
We have some additional questions in the chat. So this is from Mark again, I think. It says, what would be your recommendation on how often we should post or repost?
I mean, he just talked about it's good for anybody. Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you heard me or not.
I did. So it's good to it's good to repost. You don't have, there is no really limit on how you post or repost. But if you can repost more or post more, again, that just draws more traction to your profile.
Thanks, Maurice. And I see one more question. And this is from Mark. He asks, is there a verification process to ensure that fake or spam accounts aren't being created? If not, how can you verify if the accounts reaching out to you are real or viable? That's a great question.
So, Mark, I recognize from signing up, trying to create an additional LinkedIn account, that there is a verification process, and that verification process starts at the beginning. So as you list your email into that field, you fill out all of the demographic information. LinkedIn then sends you an email to verify. If you don't verify in a certain amount of time, or you try to retry it too many times, that profile or the attempt to create that profile will become, it won't become eligible for a while. You have to reach out and then try again. In terms as reaching out to or individuals with fake profiles or, not really legitimate profiles, that's a risk many of us take. When I receive connection requests, I always take a look at the profile, take a look at their number of connections to really see if this is an actual profile. So I often you may get profiles that just seem very weird. You want to take a look at their summary, their experience, their education, so on and so forth, to really find out if this is a verified account. But in general, most accounts on LinkedIn are legitimate.
And it looks like Marianne has her hand raised.
Yes. Hi, I'm Marianne with Insight. And I would like to second what Maurice just said. And there's one more thing you can do. Sometimes you get really sketchy connection requests. Do everything Maurice just mentioned. Check out it's a full profile. And you can find out why they might want to connect with you. What I've done in the past is when I got one of those where I just wasn't sure why in the world this person would want to connect with me, I'd send them a message and say, intrigued by your connection requests, what is your interest? Why would we mutually benefit from a connection? And 9 times out of 10, if it's a spammer, they will never respond to your message. And then you don't need to connect with them. So it pays to be judicious. Don't just accept any request that hits your inbox.
All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. It is 1:54. Are there any, I guess we will have time for one more question if someone has one.
Your experience, Mark, your experience, and then also your summary. So you may be changing a job or maybe at a different point in your career. And those changes can be reflected both in the summary, kind of the narrative that you want to put out there in front of yourself, and then also in your experience. And additionally, your education. You may get a master's degree, you may have a credential. So you want to keep those sections in particular updated.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. And Maurice was answering the question, what information or areas on our LinkedIn profiles in general are good to make sure is shown or kept up to date on a regular basis. The last question I see is, will the recording be made available after the meeting? And that is for sure. Maybe Sarah can, oh, there she go. You want to answer that, Sarah?
Yes, so the webinar will be available probably sometime tomorrow or Friday of this week on our webinars and podcast page on our website. So I dropped the link there. I'm also going to go ahead and it's the same link, but just drop it again. We do have a resource page put up that Maurice helped put together for us on just some resources related to LinkedIn. And then again, we do have a video that Kendra did for us on setting up her LinkedIn account that could be a resource for someone as well. And then one other thing I'm going to just mention really quickly that I'll put in the chat box, Maurice was open to sharing his contact information with you all. So I will drop his email in the chat box.
Thank you, Sarah.
Alan, Zoom meeting, view grid, next page, meeting
Thank you
image.
so much.
Audio
Okay,
start
so
videos closed, participants sub, open chat panel, 18 new messages.
can someone mute themselves? Okay, there we go. All right, so I think that is it. I want to give a great thanks to Kendra Farrow and Maurice. I'm not going to mess your last name up this time. Crittenden. Okay, there I go. I'm proud of myself. Okay.
You got
Thank
it.
you all so very much for an informative webinar.